There you go.
Okay, good morning. My name is Dr. Ariane McGee. I am the ESOL instructional coach for middle and high schools for Forsyth County. Before coming to Forsyth County Schools in July, I was in DeKalb County at Cross Keys High School, which is located behind the Buford Highway corridor where all the signs are in Spanish. Yeah, there are some schools back there, and one of those schools is Cross Keys. I say that to say that even though my last year teaching, I didn't have any ESOL classes, guess what? They were ESOL, because once in ESOL, always in ESOL. If anybody is familiar with learning a second language, you know that until you actually use it on a regular basis, there are some things that you're just not going to know to do, such as I taught science. So in that class, we would have lots of science words, and those words may be used in a different context in their English classes, but sometimes the kids didn't know the difference between the two, so I always had to use those ESOL techniques. So if you have not already done so, please log into our Nearpod. The code is UFRMW. I didn't touch anything. It timed out. It timed out. That's okay.
Guys, and as you're setting this up, I just wanted to share this as a little brag. I feel like language, but I feel like whenever these things come along, I feel like I'm always bragging on ELA. But you guys, it's well deserved, because literally, as we were looking at our CCRPI results yesterday in leadership, we've noticed that the highest level of growth that we've had with our English language learners has actually been in English and in social studies. And I really feel like that is due to the amount of academic discourse and opportunities that you're having for our kids to participate and speak and not just be spectators on their cognitive couches in the classroom. So I feel like that's awesome what you're doing. However, now the challenge with that is that since you grew so much with our English language learners, trying now to even keep growing with that is the challenge. It's harder to remain on the top when you're already there versus being from the bottom and moving up. So, but if anyone can do it, I know it's going to be you guys. So then I'm coming back again next year saying how ELA is the best.
All right, so if you haven't already done so, please log into our Nearpod, and I want you to answer our opening question. Looks like some people have already done so. So I want to know, what are some strategies that can be used to foster interaction between students in your classroom? So take about another minute to answer that question. If you don't have the time to answer that question within that minute, that is perfectly okay, because we're going to come back to this slide in a minute.
Go back to the question, please.
We got a picture. Okay, Evans, you're going to have to explain that picture to your group, so remember that. We've got a picture.
Okay, we really want to see the question. Thank you, ma'am.
We didn't know we had to bring the computer.
It's okay, it's
Sorry.
okay.
The computer's with us.
All right, if you haven't answered the question, that is perfectly okay, because we will use this question for something in a minute. So the name of this session is called Interacting Effectively. And I know as the English teachers, and we have some other PE and other few things sprinkled in here, I know that you guys already do this, but this is just a way to give you an additional method to get them interacting. The goal is, regardless of whatever method you choose to use, you get them talking to each other. So first things first, who's ever heard of Kagan? He's been around since like the 80s. So back in September, myself and several other members of the district, we went to a training called Cooperative Learning. Initially, I went into the training and I was like, I am not going to like this, because I also went to his win-win discipline. That was not my thing. But with this training, I really liked it in that although it's a gen ed strategy, I could see the ESOL in it, and I could see how this could work with my ELs, because it takes away that pressure of when you have open group discussion with the students. I know there's a fine line that we walk. We walk that line between how long are they actually discussing the question and when are they discussing something else. But with the strategies in this book, it gives you a way to know that there is no time to discuss anything else, and they will always be discussing what the topic is in your classroom. So, with every lesson that I do, I like to set it up like I set up my classroom. So, every class lesson has a question that needs to be answered. Our essential question for today is, how does eliciting academic conversation among students ensure engagement or that academic discourse throughout the lesson? Our content objective, or the what we are learning, is we're going to be learning some activities and grouping configurations that encourage those interactions that lead to that academic conversation and discourse throughout the lesson. Our language objective, or the how will I, as a teacher, know that you, my students, have mastered our content objective, is I will be listening to hear that you can explain how you're going to use interactions in your classroom to a partner. So before I forget, I'm probably not going to get through everything in the presentation. So here's what I'm going to do. At the end of the day, Dr. Thomas will send you the Google Slides presentation that I've done the Nearpod from. As you can see, it is a lot longer, like 40 slides long. Yeah, it's long. It's a lot longer than what you're going to see in the Nearpod, but it has lots of hyperlinks in it. So hyperlink number 1, which is what I'll actually go to in a second, it is to this sheet right here. Hyperlink number 2 is to these cards. Hyperlink number 3 is to some of the stuff in this book. So, looking at this sheet, once you get this hyperlink, this is going to be what you use to group your students. So, you're going to rank your students in your classroom from highest achieving to the lowest achieving using this sheet. After you have ranked them from highest achieving to lowest achieving, you're going to divide the number of students in your classroom by 4. This is going to tell you how many groups of 4 students you're going to have. So let's say you have 25 kids in your class. You will have 6 groups still, but one of those groups will have 5 students. Let's say you have 26 students. That's the remainder of 2. You will have 7 groups in your class, but 2 of the groups will have 3 students. Let's say you have 27 students. 7 groups, but one of them will have 3 students. Now, back to the list. After you rank the students from highest achieving to lowest achieving, you're going to divide this list into 4 quadrants. 25%. So, numbers 1 to 6 will represent your highest achieving students in your class, or the top 25% students in your class. Numbers 7 to 12, those are your high mediums. Numbers 13 to 18, those are your low mediums. And number 19 to 24, those are your lowest students in your classroom. Now, here is where your teacher expertise comes in. You're going to take into consideration their little personalities. Where are my freshman teachers? Thank you for being here. I appreciate you so much. Freshman teachers. All right. So you're going to take into consideration their little personalities. You're going to take into consideration the language they speak and their levels of English proficiency. You do have a Jim on your staff, Mr. Daniels. He's your ESOL teacher. He can tell you what their level of English proficiency is. You're also going to take into consideration their exceptionalities. Taking all of these things into consideration, you're going to put them into groups as follows. So, in each group you will have 1 high medium, 1 low medium, and 1 low. And you do that until you run out of students. So, any questions so far? All right, we've discussed everything on there. So, the next part of this is your classroom configuration. So if it's possible, you want to have your classroom arranged in a way that is conducive to grouping. As a teacher that had 36 students, having 9 clusters of desks in a room that was smaller than this did not work for me. So I had my students seated in pairs so that anytime I wanted a whole group structure, you just turn around and you are with your group of 4. So either seat them in pairs or seat them in 4s. You're going to assign each cluster of desks a group number. So I'll just hand these out randomly so that you guys can see. And hand one to the back group right here. Here. All right. So each cluster of desks will be assigned a group number. And let's see, that I do have one more. Each cluster of desks will be assigned a group number. Each person in that group will also be assigned a person number. So you can either label the person or the desk. Each person will also be assigned a letter, and here's why. So in these groups, you've got to remember, you have that highest achieving student in one of those groups, right? That student loves to talk, and anytime you throw up a question for the class to answer, that student's going to raise their hand. They're going to dominate the conversation. You want to teach that student to wait your turn or listen to others. So you're going to pick the person who's going to talk first. So in that grouping structure, I may say, okay, we're going to do a whole group structure, and I want person number 1 to talk first. If that person that likes to talk is not the person that you call, that person has to quiet, and you've got to wait your turn. Also in those groups, you've got the student, disengaged Bob, that could care less about school. He's not going to say anything unless you force him to. Well, now we're forcing you to. So if I say person number 2 and Bob is person number 2, guess what? Bob has got to talk for 30 seconds or however long I say as the teacher. The next part of this is, let's say I call a partner structure, either shoulder or face partner. I'm still in that group and I still want to dominate the conversation, so I have to identify a person who's going to share first. So you can either say partner A will be the person to share first, partner B will be the person to share first, and they're going to share for a set amount of time. Let's backtrack a little bit. Let's analyze the way that we put these students in groups. Go back to this sheet. Let's say I decided that I was going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. You guys are a group. 5, 6, 7, 8. You guys are a group. 9, 10, 11, 12. All the way down to 21, 22, 23, 24. What's going on in that group?
Not a thing.
Not a thing. Nothing. So let's think about the benefits for not only your ELs, but your lower achieving students, the benefits of grouping them with one high medium, one low medium, and one low. What's the benefit of that for those students?
They're going to have things modeled for them. For the lower student, so they're going to have someone modeling the way to respond, and it also, as they start to talk, you're talking to 3 people instead of 30.
All right, thank you guys. I can go now. She got it. That's the whole point. Y'all remember that for her teeth. So that is the whole point of this. Number 1, I'm only talking to 3 or 4 other students. Number 2, I get a model of what a good answer sounds like. So for my ELs and for my lower students, this is perfect. For that higher student, it gives them a sense of leadership because as a high student, I'm that person who, if you don't get it right, I'm going to coach you to the answer because you will not embarrass me in front of the teacher. So I'm going to take on that coaching responsibility, and it's not necessarily me giving you the answer. I'm going to coach you into the right answer because the goal of this is, if you have strategically seated your students, by the end of the year, you're going to have trouble ranking them from highest achieving to lowest achieving. You should change this structure every 4 to 6 weeks, except for my freshman teacher. Change as necessary. So that could be 2 weeks for you. It may even be 1 week. You may also want to think about changing it depending on what you are doing in your class, because certain topics, certain students will be higher achieving than other students. So any questions so far? All right. So let's say you have that situation with a group of 5. Not a problem. Here's what you can do. You put your 2 students that speak the same language in the same group, and here's why. You're always going to have, in my experience with working with students who are ELs, 2 students, one who is a talker, who will fool you into thinking that they are understanding everything that you're saying and that they are on target. They are representing for you their communication skills, not their academic skills. You get their paper back and it's like, oh my gosh, what is wrong? Then there's that other student not saying a word in English. You get their paper back, and for the most part, they've done significantly better than you thought. That's your processor. So if you put those two students together, your processor learns to talk, your talker learns to process. And in a structure like this, whether I call shoulder or face, these two are always going to be together. They can kind of act as a crutch to each other. One of the science teachers said that she thinks that she would leave her two students in a group together. It could either be the 5 structure or the 4 structure. She may leave her two students in a group together all the time because they're working really well, and in chemistry there are some difficult topics. So I suggest the same thing to you. Although we want to take their crutches away towards the end of the year, and hopefully you do that, if it works really well and you feel like you're going over something difficult and they need that language buddy, just leave it be. All right, if you have a situation where you have the 2 groups of 3, so you're going to seek those 2 groups together. So at any time, if you call shoulder or face partner, they're going to have that shoulder or face partner. But when you call whole group structure, they will function as a group of 3. If it's just a one group of 3, put your students that follow directions. Because let's say you call shoulder partners. These 2 are going to talk. This one's not going to say a thing because this is disengaged Bob. And he's looking for ways to get out of doing the work. So he's not going to say anything. You want to put 3 students that will always follow directions so that everybody gets a chance to talk if it's just that one group of 3. So our first Kagan structure that we are going to do is a timed round robin. The way that this one works is we're going to go back to that opening question. But for you would give a question to the class, give the students some think time, and then put your parameters in place. Ours are going to be, partner 1 is going to be the first person to share. Each person is going to have 25 seconds to share their answer to the opening question. While one person is sharing, everyone else, you're just listening. When you're listening, you're looking for ways that you can add to your own answer. Things you might want to change. You may want to change your answer based on what someone else said. Questions you may have for the person who is sharing. After each person has had a chance to share, then we do 1 minute of whole group discussion. That is a time where you give your kudos, you ask your questions, or you elaborate if you didn't have time to finish your answer. Are there any questions? So first things first, find yourself a group of 4 people. While you're doing that, I will go back to the opening question. All right, so identify the person who's going to share first. All right, so partner 1, you will share first. Your time, your 25 seconds starts now.
When she put it up there first time, how did you know it was Evans that put the picture up there?
Oh, because I didn't hide the student names.
Oh, it comes up on yours. Oh, okay.
So on yours? Oh, okay.
It's only who's long been can actually
I didn't know that. All right, person 2, your turn starts now.
Who's the person 2? Person's already on?
All right, person 3, go.
Okay, do it again. Keep going. That's hard. Keep going the same way.
All right, person 4, go.
I do expand if you did, if you had.
Okay, so keep going, expand it. Just think about what you want for your students, and I kind of
All right, we do have a group with a 5th person, so that 5th person go. Everybody else, you're in open group discussion. Number 5, go, open group discussion, everyone else.
What's that? Yeah, I've been doing this for the last couple of years. So what I do is after every test, so after every test, I rank my kids. Okay, how we do, and then I even go farther. I call it serpentine. So I take my top 6. And there's my 6 groups, but number 7 goes with number 6. So that I make sure that I don't have 1,
Whole group discussion.
12, 1, 7, 13, and then 20 together, and then the last group is 24, 16, the last kid in each. So I try to do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, so that the end of it's a little bit more variety.
Yeah.
And you don't get the same whatever. And yes, change it every test because I don't want them.
You don't want them to get used to being
Get
in.
comfortable and be willing to, because they'll get each other. They'll cover for each other. If they get tight, they'll cover for each other.
And you teach the seniors, right?
Yeah. So, and it's a little difficult because you said with the 9th graders personalities, but that doesn't change. That's still true.
The difference is they are motivated because they want to graduate.
Well, yeah.
That's the difference. Yeah, I find.
But day to day, that may not be true. Day to day, it's Thursday and it's raining. I don't care.
You're right. All right, and that was your time. Okay, so let's think about this structure. You have 36 kids in your class. So as I walked around, I got to hear an answer from every person in the room. And it took me 3 minutes to get an elaborated response from each person in the room. So using a structure like this in your 45 to 50-minute class period, you could possibly get 3 elaborated responses from your kids. Remember, the goal is to get them talking. Whoever is talking is the person that's doing the achieving. Now, several things can happen. Well, first, let's analyze the structure itself. You've strategically seated your EO at seat number 4. What's the benefit of being in seat number 4 for that EO?
They don't have to go first.
They don't have to go first, and
They hear everybody else.
they hear everybody else go, so that when it's my turn to go, okay, I'm just going to repeat what person number 1 says. Guess what? That's okay. That is perfectly okay, because when we do that open discussion, now I'm going to piggyback off of what my partner says. Now I have some words that I want to say. I just didn't want to be put on the spot because maybe my English is not that good and I don't want anybody to know or think that I'm dumb. Now, several things that you can do as the structure is going on. So as a teacher, you can walk around and listen to what every group is saying and then call time and summarize what you heard. That's the most time efficient way. Way number 2 is, let's say you walk by a group and you heard something that was really powerful. So you may say, okay, group number 5, I would like you to share what you talked about in your group, and you also identify a person, because remember, you have those numbers. Identify a person that is going to share. At that point, don't identify your EO, because they don't want to be put on the spot. So unless you have one of those ELs that doesn't want anybody to know that they're an EL, call on someone else in the group to share with the class what was talked about. Or you can do what I'm going to do, which is I'm going to open the floor. Is there any group who would like to share what they talked about? Okay, I'm going to pick on people. My AP English teacher, tell me all about your serpent.
Bad news is econ. So
Oh,
I'm the weirdo.
same thing.
But there's a ton of vocabulary. So I actually use this strategy on a regular basis. It's what I do every single unit. So I will re-rank my kids after every single test. And sometimes it's based on that test, sometimes it's based on cumulative test scores. But the intent is I have group leaders, and that means that the kid who is struggling in a difficult course has somebody to listen to and understand from other than me. Because I can't be on top of every single one of those kids all the time. There's no way to do it. But they're going to get help from somebody who understands the content almost as well as I do. And in some cases, they understand other stuff way better than I do. And it helps that top end kid too, because they get a chance to explain it, which means they learn it at a deeper level. So it's huge.
I liked hearing this group talk about the time constraints. So sometimes when we ask students to talk, we give them that freedom of as much time as they need. And really what they need is the constraint of you only have this amount of time. That makes their brain choose what's most important to share, keep them from rambling, keep them on topic. And that's just a great strategy anytime. Anytime you feel like they're getting out of control with the amount of time, you give them that constraint, and it helps keep them focused.
Yes. Secret. I did not use this with my actual class, so I had that issue of I don't know if they're still talking about what I want them to talk about. Obviously, I taught forensics, so it's very interesting. You can turn on the news and have a full discussion about what happened on the news, but what if I'm engrossed over here? What's happening back there? They're talking, but they're not talking about what I'm talking about. So my classroom was the loudest, but it may not have been the reasons that I wanted it to be the loudest. Because yes, we were discussing on this half of the room, but back there, probably not. Something that I saw Dr. Thomas do, she didn't even realize she was doing it, is in one of the groups, we had some silence. So the other piece of this, that's where that coaching part comes in, where you have to encourage your partners. So if you strategically group them, they will encourage each other to give that elaborated response. So over time, it leads to all of the academic discourse that the district is always talking about. So are there any questions about this strategy?
What if disengaged Bob won't talk even in a small group? What if it's his turn and he sits there like a rock?
So that's why we have to put them and we place them strategically in these groups. And if you have a good group, remember, Ariane's in that group too. And I don't accept mediocre. So I am going to coach you and push you to be a better person. So if for 30 seconds it's me saying one word and him saying one word back, I've got you talking. Eventually, you're going to get tired of me harassing you about not giving me an answer. Okay. So eventually, I will talk for 30 seconds because that is what I have to do to be in the group with her. So, any other questions? All right, moving right along. So, why are we doing this interaction? Remember this. It matters to talking in class because the amount of talk that a student does is correlated to their achievement. We want to get even the lowest student in your classroom talking so that the achievement continues to rise in ELA. So, number one thing you can do, give them frequent opportunities for interaction and discussion. That could be with the teacher or that could be student to student. In a structure like this, as I said before, it took us 3 minutes to get through that. In 3 minutes, I heard an elaborated response from every student. So in a class period that's 40 to 50 minutes, you could hear elaborated responses 3 times. Make sure that whatever grouping configuration you do, like if Kagan does not work for you, I'm not the central office police. I will never come into your room and say, I taught you all about Kagan and you're not using it. I'm going to tell Dr. Thomas. No, just send me an email and we'll find something that works for you and your ELs. Not a problem. But whatever you do, make sure that you take a look at that content objective and what you want the kids to be able to accomplish, or the language objective. Make sure that it aligns to that objective. There's also a slide in the Google Slides that shows 30 ways to group kids for cooperative learning, so you can take a look at that. Giving them sufficient wait time. Hear it in English. Translate it into my language. Got the answer in my language. Got the answer in English. Now I'm ready to say it. That took me about 10 to 15 seconds to say. Your kids need just that much wait time so that they can respond correctly. And the final part of this is giving them ample opportunities to clarify those language, that concept in their first language. That is why the grouping is important. If you have two students that speak the same language, try to put them in a group together as much as possible or as much as needed so that they can always go and say what they need to say in whatever their language is to get those understandings. And as a person who's taught kids that spoke multiple languages, even though I never spoke Bengali or Amharic, I know when you're not saying what's on the board. I can tell. I say, you're not saying what I said. So don't be afraid. Don't think that they're just talking about something else. It's okay. That can look like them looking back in their translation dictionaries if they don't have a language buddy. It could be they're going to go to Google Translate to translate something into their language. It could be that they found someone that they're comfortable in the class or in their group with, and they're just talking about it in English, but giving them that opportunity to clarify. So let's talk about teacher talk during a lesson. We're going to take a little quiz. So go to your Nearpod if you are logged in. If not, don't worry about it. I'll give you some answers out. I would like you to answer the question. What is the typical amount of time that a teacher talks during a lesson? Typically. And then the second question is, how long should you talk, or what's the recommended amount? So for typical, the answer choices were 10, 25, 75, I believe, and 80 to 90. So typically how long?
Oh, we got it. I'm just going around for a second.
You can also do what your students would do. So if you were going to do a Nearpod quiz, I would hide this because if I'm Maritza, I'm going to look down and I'm going to see that Sanders got this one right, and I'm going to go back and change my answer. So typically, teachers talk 80 to 90% of the time. You should actually talk 25 to 30% of the time. So in a 45-minute class period, that amounts to about 15, 20 minutes. It does not look like you talk for that amount of time and then you sit at your desk and you say nothing else for the rest of the period. Tried that, does not work. Students will ask you millions of questions and cause you to have to talk again. So the way that it works is you chunk it and chew it. 5 to 10 minutes, looking at their attention span, 5 to 10 minutes of lesson, and then 2 to 3 minutes to process it. Processing could be a turn and talk. It could be a round robin. It could be a partner structure. Or it could be a let's flip the script. I like to give my students brain breaks. You know when they need a brain break. Just something, and I would suggest that you do that when you're teaching them the Kagan structures. We want to trick them into having fun while learning. So when teaching the structures, initially, like if we were to use that time round robin, Thanksgiving is coming up, right? Everybody has a favorite Thanksgiving meal or something that means Thanksgiving at your house. At my house, when we have gumbo, that means Thanksgiving. So I'm from Louisiana, by the way. When we have gumbo, that means Thanksgiving for me. It's not turkey. It's gumbo. So I would talk about gumbo and why I like gumbo in my 25 seconds, and somebody else would talk about something else. And then you give them that 1 minute to talk with each other. Well, what's gumbo? What's in gumbo? Why do you like it so much? So they can ask questions. Now, after they've gotten the structure down, then you say, okay, back to business. Now we're going to do a Socratic seminar on Romeo and Juliet. I don't know what you guys are on right now, but you use the same structure, but we're going to answer this academic question. So in that way, you kind of hook them and they think they're playing a game and they're excited about doing it. All right, moving right along. So quickly, why do we use this interaction? The number one reason is because it stimulates the brain. Think about this structure. 4 kids. The only person that will ever know that I got the answer wrong are the 3 people in my group. And if I am strategically seated with by my teacher, my partners are going to, or as I like to say, my family is going to make sure that I can have the right answer, and then I know why it's the right answer. In that way, it increases the motivation, it reduces my risk, I'm going to take chances, it gives me more processing time because even though I got it wrong, my partners are going to walk me through the process of getting it right. And the final thing is it increases student attention. Initially, guys, like if you go back to your room and you try this right now, it is not going to look like you want it to look. Give the kids till January. You've got a Thanksgiving break coming up, followed by EOCs for some of you, followed by Christmas. They are not ready. January is when it will look the way that you want it to look. Until then, you'll spend a lot of time walking around doing the teacher hover, smiling and nodding. This is all you have to do to make sure that they stay on task. Walk around, smile and nod, they will stay on task. All right. Thinking about your EOCs. You started teaching that stuff in August. Started teaching in August. They're taking it in May. If all you do is lecture to them and they never interact with the curriculum, do you really think they're going to remember everything that they need to remember by May? So as I said before, although this is an EL protocol, it's just good teaching. You want them to remember the things, so you make them participate in the learning. And this is the next day. They're going to remember 90%. 3 days later, it's like 70%, so it goes down a little bit as the time increases, but you get the point. The more you can make them participate, the more they're going to remember. So I will talk about the Rally Robin. We're going to skip over that one, and we're going to go to the mixed pair share with so I can show you that one. So with the Rally Robin, this is the one where the teacher gives a question that has simple multiple responses, gives the students some think time, and they take turns going back and forth until the teacher calls time. Usually between 30 seconds and 1 minute, they're going to go back and forth. To teach the structure, you could do Halloween just passed, we're going to do a Rally Robin on your favorite Halloween candy. Partner B, we're going to use your shoulder partner, identify which partner, and which person is going to share first. Partner A, you will start first. And they just go back and forth. Snickers, Twix, Kit Kat, Kisses, candy corn. And they go back and forth until you call time. Then you could flip that after they've done that when they've got the rules of the structure. And then you say, now we're going to do a Rally Robin and we're going to talk about whatever we just talked about in class. So that was our Rally Robin. So let's talk about wait time. What time do I get out?
3 minutes.
I can do this. We kind of already talked about wait time. So why are we going to wait? We need to wait because the ELs need that time to translate in their head. That time could vary by culture. They also need the time to formulate their thoughts because they're in the process of learning how to speak a language. That could look like them going back in their notes or taking time to scribble out their thinking. So the next one we're going to do is going to be a mixed pair share. So with the mixed pair share, you can incorporate a little bit of music because that's what I did. Students stand up and they mix around the room with their hand up. When the music stops or the teacher calls pair, you pair up. So kind of stand up, hand up, pair up. You pair up. That could be fist pump, high five, icon, bump, whatever it is, to get them to pair up. Everybody else, until you found a partner, you keep your hand up so that we can quickly put people into pairs. Then you're going to, if it's a elaborated response you're looking for, you do a time pair share. We're going to do time pair share, which is the same thing as Rally Robin. Each person gets a chance to talk. If it's a round robin. If it's just a list of something, quick responses, you do a Rally Robin. So for ours, we are going to answer the question, do you give sufficient wait time? How can you ensure you're giving wait time? And why is this important? So 3 questions. We're doing a time pair share. So person with the longest hair will share first. Here is your pairing music. So get up, hands up. Put your hands up. Find a partner. It gets them up. It gets them moving. 30 seconds each person. Time starts now.
I typically am not. Okay, so we give. I don't.
And switch. All right, that was time. That was time. Finish up that final thought. It still works. The quiet signal. You guys were so excited that you went all the way to the bell. If you have any questions, my email is in the presentation as well as on the board. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.